stress causes cardiovascular disturbances, or it messes up with our sleep, immunity system, and like other systems in the body.
Stress is so commonly used nowadays, but people perceive it very differently. There are two kinds of stress. Stress which is actually useful and good for survival. We need it. Biological evolution or human evolution is not geared up for so many notifications, more than 100 apps in a cell phone. Anything which can reduce HRV temporarily is a stress buster.
What is the job of these stress hormones?
It's important that we have stress. Cortisol should spike when needed and should come back to the baseline. But when it is not coming back to the baseline and is always on the higher side, that elevated cortisol will negatively influence hormones. I hear from a lot of people, my job demands me to sit down or I'm sedentary for more than 8 hours. If you're doing a 8-hour sedentary job, getting up once every hour and taking a short 10-minute walk can improve your attention and focus, can also turn off the overstimulation of amygdala.
Coming to digital detox, I think that after a stressful day, we feel like, scrolling through the phone or like watching some reels. But all these cat videos that we see for relaxing, is it actually relaxing or?
How many times has it happened with you that you fell into the loop of the reels or shorts after a period of time, your eyes feel strained and you feel like throwing away your phone, right?
Already so much is said about stress, right? By now, we already know that stress causes cardiovascular disturbances, or it messes up with our sleep or immunity system and like other systems in the body. But the thing is, we don't have the privilege not to take stress because all of us have deadlines, all of us have jobs to do, etc. So we don't have that privilege. So, keeping that as a context, today I don't want to discuss about stress and get stressed. I want to know, are there any coping mechanisms scientifically? Number one. Number two, are there any workarounds where we can make stress work for us and not against us? And lastly, like, are there any scientifically proven hacks? So, the first question to you is I keep reading that human body and brain is not wired or evolved for the modern day times. So why do they see it? Why are we not wired for what we are doing today?
Stress is so commonly used nowadays, but people perceive it very differently. There are two kinds of stress. Acute stress, which is actually useful and good for survival. We need it. We need to accomplish a task. We need to get on a stage. We need to present. We have exams to accomplish. So these are acute stresses. These are good for us. It will give us the energy. It will increase the heart rate so that we are equipped for that. But biological evolution or human evolution is not geared up for so many notifications, more than 100 apps in a cell phone, waiting for a message from somebody very important, or even digitally, we have so much available now, digital overload. So, biology is not equipped with all that. We are only equipped with acute stresses. Like in the era of predators and prey, it was important for survival. Now it's not acute response, right? We are not here for survival anymore. But chronic response, which is ongoing, continuous, which is not episodic. Continuously, it's hitting the hypothalamo adrenal pituitary axis, which is HPA axis, and continuously overstimulating amygdala. Amygdala is part of the brain where it is important for notifications. Like you shouldn't overstress it, but any kind of a stressor is stimulated. The problem is overstimulation and chronic stresses. And what we're talking about is low dose micro stresses. Like, though we are physically present here, our mind may not be present, but waiting for all the notifications out there and overthinking and ruminating.
Okay.
These are the modern day problems. We may not be, but there are a lot of things we can definitely do. You can turn off notifications what are not important for you, rather than leaving all of them open and getting triggered or disturbed too frequently. That is a top thing we can do. One is eliminate or remove whatever is not necessary for you. Then start repairing. Repairing could be in the sense of breathing techniques. Repairing could be in the sense of improving parasympathetic nervous system or improving the vagal tone. Improving could be something which is not disturbing your digestive system. So, coping mechanisms include anything that has got to be breathing. On the top would be box breathing, which is to improve focus, which is also to improve our vagal tone. Anything which improves vagal tone, it could be humming, singing, saying omkar, or even box breathing. All of them improve vagal tone. Anything which can reduce HRV temporarily is a stress buster. It could be playing with your dog, it could be spending time with your family, it could be a 10-minute short walk. There are a number of studies, right? If you open and see, a 10-minute short walk actually improves working memory and reduces stress.
Okay, so basically, our bodies are not equipped to receive 100 notifications every day on the phone. Now, let's talk about stress hormones. Like, what is the job of these stress hormones? And, like, how do we make these systems work for us and not against us?
It's important that we have stress. We should survive. It's important we have normal levels of cortisol because it will improve our immunity, it will help us handle tough situations, it will improve energy, and it will keep us alert. So it's important we have cortisol in the body. Everybody thinks there should be no cortisol or low cortisol. No, there should be ideal cortisol. Even high is not good, even low is not good. Okay. So whenever there is a trigger, hypothalamus gets a notification that person is in stress. Please release cortisol. They need the energy, they need the heart rate, they need good blood pressure, they need good blood sugar so that they can run for the problem that they are in. So hypothalamus got the notification, then the pituitary will help adrenals achieve it by releasing cortisol.
Okay.
But along with that, we also release adrenaline and noradrenaline. These are also other two hormones which temporarily increase heart rate, increase blood pressure,
Okay.
and make sure we accomplish the job.
Okay.
And then what happens? Cortisol will get back to its baseline.
Okay.
That should ideally happen.
Okay.
But when there is a chronic stressor, something is very chronic. You have financial anxiety throughout the day. You have digital overload throughout the day. You are ruminating over some negative thoughts. That means you are continuously having the stress. So cortisol will never get to baseline.
Got it.
That is the problem. Cortisol should spike when needed and should come back to the baseline. But when it is not coming back to the baseline and is always on the higher side, that elevated cortisol will influence sex hormones, will negatively influence the sex hormones, for example, LH, FSH, and it starts to decline other important hormones in the body, which are important for fertility.
Got it. And coming to coping mechanisms, whenever we think about de-stress, etc., what comes into our mind is like maybe like short walks or like box breathing or indulging in any hobby, etc., etc. But as long as we don't know the science behind it or how it works towards us, I think habit building is very difficult. At least I think that's what I observed in myself. Whenever I know that what doing this activity is exactly doing to my body, I think maintaining that and building a habit is easy. So we wrote down some coping mechanisms, and the segment I'm calling building stress fitness. So you can explain us what is the science behind each of these coping mechanisms and maybe how it will start with box breathing. So how does it help? What goes through in the body when someone box breathes?
Box breathing is basically inhaling, holding, exhaling, and holding for equal amount of time, which is 4 seconds each, right?
Right.
So that means allowing the body to come back to align with breathing techniques so that you are not anxious and your heart rate can come down. So basically, whenever we are anxious, we are having tachycardia. That means our heart is beating more number of times because it thinks we are running. But we have to get that back to normal. We should get back our heart rate. We should bring down our heart rate variability. By doing this kind of breathing techniques, the main focus is to reduce the heart rate, reduce the sympathetic tone.
Okay.
So that is how it works. By reducing the sympathetic tone, it will bring back the heart rate back to baseline, and it will also improve something called parasympathetic nervous system or vagal tone, which will allow us to calm down.
Okay. Next is short walks between stressful schedules. So how does that help?
I hear from a lot of people, my job demands me to sit down, or I'm sedentary for more than 8 hours, or sometimes 8 to 10 hours. People don't even get up from the chair. I've heard that a number of times. But we have a lot of science, we have a lot of evidence, we have a lot of research now which shows if you are doing a 8 hour sedentary job, getting up once every hour and taking a short 10-minute walk can improve your attention and focus, and also can improve your working memory, can also turn off the overstimulation of amygdala, which is the center where it monitors the stress.
Okay.
Or if you're not able to walk, you have place constraints, then you can simply do 10 squats, your own body weight squats. So anything which can temporarily allow you to enhance the circulation in the body, anything which can enhance temporary release of nitric oxide in the body, will increase something called brain derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF, in the brain, and will allow you to focus and will allow you to retain what you're learning or reading, and allow you to work on your working memory.
Okay.
So
When you say working memory, that means like these 5 minutes breaks that we're actually taking can add up to much better productivity than not taking these 5 minutes breaks, also, right?
yes. So working memory is basically forming patterns for long-term memory, right? So for that, accepting information is not enough. We have to retain it. So for us to retain it better, we have to break patterns of constant sitting and keep moving frequently, at least once every 1 hour. That is what our Apple Watch at least says. It's been an hour. I think it's time for you to get up. But how many of us follow the trigger or a notification? This is a healthier kind of notification I'm talking about.
Right.
Use it wisely. Some can help you, some can distract you. But this is a good distraction to have. If you're so involved in your work, having this notification from your watch that it's been an hour, you need to stand up, that's a good notification.
Got it.
Yeah.
Coming to digital detox, I think that after a stressful day, we feel like, scrolling through the phone or like watching some reels or catching up with friends, what is happening in their lives, etc. But all these cat videos that we see for relaxing, is it actually relaxing or is it working the opposite way?
How many times has it happened with you that you fell into the loop of the reels or shorts? After a period of time, your eyes feel strained and you feel like throwing away your phone, right?
Yeah.
This is cognitive fatigue. All of us are facing cognitive fatigue. First of all, what we were looking for is a dopamine drive, right? Every time you swipe, you'll get that dopamine drive. So we fell into that loop only later to realize how much of time we have spent on that, and eye strain and also cognitive strain. Like suddenly word recalling ability will come down. We feel fatigued, and we develop eye strain and dry eyes. The list goes on.
Okay.
When body or brain is not getting uncomfortable by waiting for something, and giving anything instantly is not good for us. Giving instant dopamine spikes, for example, it could be through food or it could be through digital media. Anything that you're giving instantly for the dopamine rush is actually not good. So body is not waiting, body is not calming, body is not in a parasympathetic mode. It is always in something called sympathetic drive. When body is in continuous sympathetic drive, your heart rate is always on a higher side. You're always anxious. You're not calming down. You're not a calmer person. After that point where you're continuously scrolling and you have to do some focused task, it will be challenging.
Okay.
It often happens with us. We are in the middle of scrolling and somebody asks very important thing and we forget what the question was many times. That is because we lose attention, we lose focus long term by doing this mindless scrolling, or even this is called digital overload, which could drive down our cognitive ability. And this is termed cognitive decline or cognitive fatigue, which will hamper our attention, which will hamper our focus. Importantly, going forward, if that is going to become a habit, it will hamper something called working memory. When there is no attention, no focus, will not form memories in long term. So that is going to be an even bigger problem that could end up with a lot of other things.
Got it. Coming to sleep, sleep we know helps with a lot of other things. It is very good, etc. But specifically for stress, how does sleeping 7 to 8 hours help in like stress relief?
Sleeping more than 7 to 8 hours, I think we should focus on how much time we're spending in REM phase, which is rapid eye movement phase, and also in deep sleep. All of us think we are sleeping 8 to 9 hours. I also feel the same. I also used to feel the same. But when I started tracking my sleep data, I realized not all my nights are in restful sleep. I did have time periods where I got only 2 or 3% of restorative sleep. I had spent less time in my deep sleep. The next day was very challenging for me. I used to feel more stressful, wanted more time to rest and repair. I don't feel fresh the next day morning. Though, I mean, on the outside, I could feel fresh, but it would be challenging in terms of productivity. So, more than having total number of hours of sleep, though it is ideal to have 8 to 9 hours of sleep, it's important how much we spend in deep sleep. It should be at least 20 to 25% of the total sleep length duration should be in deep sleep. And in REM sleep, it should be at least 15 to 20% duration. Now, is it that important to track? Okay, track for a month. You've seen what changes are hampering your stages of sleep. You make changes. Then you see how the activities that you have chose, how the changes you have made throughout the day are influencing these sleep stages, and you have optimized. And then you don't need a variable. We don't have to wear these variables lifetime to keep tracking things. Once you know what habits work for you, what habits don't work, what are the habits that can get you to that deeper sleep and REM sleep, then you're good.
Okay, got it. And oftentimes we also hear that keep your most stressful tasks in the morning, right? That could be because of the cortisol that you were saying. Cortisol should rise in the morning, and then so how does organizing our work according to circadian rhythm help? Like what happens scientifically when we do that?
This is a good question, but before that, we need to understand that we have a circadian rhythm. If body thinks you're waking up same time every day and sleeping almost similar time every day, you have been consistent with the schedules, and then assuming that you wake up in the morning around 7 a.m. and you're sleeping around 9 to 10 p.m. in the night, then according to that, we'll discuss. If you're a morning riser, early morning riser, you wake up at 6 or 7, then cortisol rises within 45 minutes to 1 hour. Then you do the most productive work at 8 a.m. It could be planning, it could be decision making, it could be reading those important mails, something like that. Until afternoon, we can concentrate on more creative works because we need more energy. Cortisol drives energy, cortisol improves our focus. So, that is morning half is very crucial for productivity, creativity, decision making, cognitively challenged things. That is important. And cortisol keeps falling towards evening, and we can keep less challenging works, less creative works towards evening.
Got it.
And it's also important not to do challenging tasks towards evening bedtime because again you don't want to drive your cortisol because you don't want so much energy to drive and increase your cortisol, which will only suppress the melatonin and will tell the body he or she is not sleeping, keep her awake, drive her blood pressure, increase her core body temperature. Then you'll not fall into your sleep. Though you want to sleep, your body is not actually sleeping, but it's actually working.
Right.
So I think we all need to respect that and then prepare to wind down towards the evening to actually fall asleep.
Got it. Got it. Coming to food, right? Often, I think the connection between food and stress is often not established properly. So, I want to know what are the top foods that are actually stressing us out and what are the top foods that can help us de stress.
This is a no brainer, right? All refined foods, all ultra processed foods, all foods which are high in omega 6, which is like seed oils, high trans fats, these are all on a
And
bad,
how
bad side.
exactly are they stressing us
First
out?
of all these things are stressing our gut. It causes something called leaky gut, where your gut barrier is not healthy, and it is your gut do not know what to keep away from our important functions in the body. So our gut starts becoming leaky, toxins start entering back into the blood, and all sorts of autoimmune reactions can trigger, or inflammatory diseases can get triggered. So everything starts with the gut. That is what we know, we believe, and we do as well. So it's important we our decisions align when we are not in good mood or when we are in stressed. We often see people reaching out for unhealthy stuff only when we are, however motivated people are, when they are stressed, they reach out or look out for very unhealthy foods. It's a way of body asking for unhealthy behaviors. So we are generally aligned towards unhealthy behaviors when we are more stressed. So it's important we are always prepared.
Okay.
When you're hungry, you have something to eat and you don't have to decide. So avoid important decision making processes during your stress times. So avoid that stress of deciding your meal. So if you have a meal right there, you're not going to decide for your meal, and you end up eating the healthier meal.
Got it.
And that decides again what kind of stress response you'll have.
Got it.
Because again, gut and stress are very bidirectional. You're stressed out, your body asks for unhealthy foods, you give unhealthy foods, your gut will uh, process it very differently and adds up to your stress. So
Okay.
it's a vicious cycle, so we need to break it. So avoid decisions around food during your stress behaviors, during your stressful times. So that way, packaging your food priorly is very important,
Got it.
especially on very important days where you have no time, you need very productive time at work, that day your schedule is very busy. Avoid deciding your food,
Got it.
or you take help of others. Maybe others will decide better food choices for you when you're stressful.
Got it. Are there any specific foods that help us like de-stress or tackle stress better?
Helpful foods while we are stressful are definitely omega 3 rich foods, high healthy fats, more omega 3 rich foods. Choose for complex carbs and protein rich meal. So if you have good balance of healthy fats, protein and carb, it's good. Better to avoid all kinds of refined foods, all seed oils, especially wheat, because that stress can in fact act as a nausea and trigger your reflex symptoms during stressful periods. And also have shorter meals. Having a large meal when you're stressful, most of the energy is diverted towards managing your HPA axis.
Yeah.
There is less blood flow to your digestive system. Digestive system can't handle a larger meal during that time, because all your energy is diverted. Okay, digestion is not important. He or she is very stressful. Let me handle the stress by diverting to HPA axis or the cortisol. So as such, you don't have good supply or good enzymes during stressful times. So it's important we eat smaller, shorter, complex meals and not refined foods, and not larger meals for
Got
sure.
it. Since we're talking about food choices, one most controversial or like most asked question is caffeine intake working against stress or like for stress? Is it adding to the stress?
As such, caffeine more than 300 mg is not very good for the body.
Okay.
But if you're having less than that, up to 100 to 200 mg, that too you're not highly caffeine sensitive individual, assuming that, then, and assuming you are in your circadian rhythm, then before 2 a.m. is better. But if you're a caffeine sensitive individual, you have genes which are more prone to caffeine sensitivity, then it's important you finish between 10 to 12 noon.
Okay.
But again, caffeine has got chlorogenic acid, it has got good polyphenols, it is good for your brain health, it reduces inflammation, it has got all this fantastic stuff. So, up to 200 mg of caffeine is not going to harm you unless you're a caffeine sensitive individual.
Okay. And how do we know if we are caffeine sensitive without testing for genes? Are there any signs?
If you're not testing for genes, and if you end up having 2 to 3 cups of coffee and you feel palpitations, you feel like your heart rate is higher, and you feel that heartbeat and the jitteriness, and your hands start shaking, and your palms are sweaty, then that means it is overactivated.
Okay.
You need to reduce it, calm it down, and you need to reduce the dose of your caffeine intake.
Got it. And on the other side, apart from the diet that we take naturally, there are these supplements, right? Like ashwagandha or like, GABA supporting supplements, etc., specifically for stress. So, how do you recommend, taking these supplements for people who are experiencing a lot of stress in their life?
Okay, this is not a general recommendation. Whenever cortisol levels are higher, early morning 8 a.m. cortisol is higher, like more than 20 mgdl, then adaptogens will work very well for them. But only ashwagandha in the form of KSM 66. Others are not absorbed so well. So KSM 66 has got a calming factor. That is why cortisol can come down, and that will help them. And there's another molecule called L-theanine. L-theanine is also calming molecule. It will calm down, but again it will not suppress your melatonin,
Okay.
because we don't want melatonin to be suppressed in the night, and we want that good sleep. So L-theanine will bring that calmness in us. And in fact, for anxious people, taking it in the morning will allow them to focus more.
Okay.
And in the evening, it will allow them to unwind and get to good sleep. So L-theanine is one, adaptogens are another when the cortisol is higher. But when the cortisol is lower, adaptogens do not work, or in fact it is not very good. Then we have to rule out what are the other causes. Is it primary adrenal insufficiency or secondary adrenal insufficiency, or pituitary is having a problem, or adrenals in itself are a problem? Then we need to figure out what are the other reasons.
Got it. Yeah.
And all the polyphenols help. That is how caffeine was helping. That is how dark chocolates do help. That is how omega 3s help. That is how magnesium threonate helps. But GABA as a direct molecule, it is not. It doesn't cross blood-brain barrier very easily. Precursors for GABA, for example, L-theanine, will work in calming the individual. So yes, these are certain molecules which will allow people to de-stress or calm down, along with breathing techniques.
Got it. Got it. One more thing I personally observe is we usually have busy days, and like once we end those busy days, we usually don't feel like meeting friends or doing any social activities. But whenever I push myself to make these connections, to meet friends, etc., I actually feel better. So, what is the scientific connection between stress and social connectedness, so that like we all push ourselves to do more of.
Whenever we are socially more connected, our oxytocin gets stimulated.
Okay.
We bond with people better. Whenever oxytocin is stimulated, it will improve our immune system. So immune system gets stronger. Also, our energy improves, and it reduces the risk of mortality, reduces the risk of diseases. So simple social bonding or simple social connections will improve oxytocin, and it will also reduce the cortisol spike. So it will allow us to calm down. It will bring stronger immunities because it has got direct connections to immune system.
Got it.
So there will be reduced risk of diseases as such, and there will be reduced risk of you falling sick often.
Got it. So, apart from whatever we discussed, some of the coping mechanisms, what are other stress coping mechanisms that will reduce the HRV?
Okay. Any breathing technique where it involves a longer exhalation compared to an inhalation will stimulate a vagal system or something called parasympathetic nervous system, and hence reduces HRV.
Can you show us any top two or top three breathing techniques while we are speaking?
Seriously, want to do that now?
Yeah, why not? We'll do it together.
But who will count 4 seconds? 4 seconds.
We'll put.
So
you can like open maybe that link.
Okay, wait.
And that
I
link.
have it on my phone. This breathing technique was initially used by Navy SEALs and athletes
Yeah, I heard. Yeah.
because it will reduce, because it really, so what they compared was before and after the technique. When they're very stressful, how do you know it's stressful? Their heart rate is higher, the blood pressure is higher,
Right.
the respiratory rate is higher, the cortisol is higher. When they have chronic stress, even their inflammatory markers will be higher. The digestion will be lower.
Right.
And they have IBS like symptoms.
Right.
After box breathing activity, the same people, their vitals were checked again. So their resting heart rate came down, the respiratory rate came down, their HRV came down.
IBS like symptoms also must have
Yeah,
reduced.
so once the heart rate stabilizes, once the blood pressure stabilizes, once the baroreceptors are the receptors which get stimulated when we breathe, will tell the body that we need to get calmer because of stimulation of vagal tone. So humming is one. People used to hum a lot, sing a lot in bathrooms. I think they should keep doing that a lot. Yeah.
You can put it on a stand. Maybe it's helpful, easy for you. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll do it like this. You will hold for 4 seconds, then you'll inhale for 4 seconds, then hold for next 4 seconds, then exhale through your mouth.
Okay. Exhale through mouth. Okay.
Exhale through your mouth for 4 seconds, and then hold for again 4 seconds.
Okay.
That's why it's called box breathing.
Okay.
So on the count, you'll start 3,
Okay.
2, 1. Now inhale for 4 seconds. And then hold your breath. And then exhale through your mouth for next 4 seconds. And then hold. Keep doing this for next 4 to 5 cycles over a course of 5 more minutes. So basically this will bring down your heart rate variability. It will bring down your resting respiratory rate and also your heart rate.
Got it.
But people think even finding this 5 minutes is a problem to reduce stress, right? To cope up with stress. So people often ask, I don't have 5 minutes, then is there a shorter method? Yes, there's a shortest breathing technique which is done under a minute, which has shown to reduce the stress,
Okay.
which is called physiological sigh, where we take two deep inhalations, then exhale through mouth.
Okay.
So by doing this, whenever we are inhaling twice, it will stimulate baroreceptors. Basically, they're very sensitive to inhalations. And when we exhale, we can stimulate parasympathetic nervous system again, which again improves vagal tone to bring back our heart rate and blood pressure, which have gone high when we are very stressful.
Got it.
So this is another one. I've seen this most of the times when we do spirometry tests, which is called pulmonary function tests at the center. People often don't take deep breaths rightfully, right?
Okay.
When they take deep breath, they always suck in their abdomen and the space of their lungs gets narrowed down. We can't expand the lungs because the lower part of the lungs expand downwards.
Right.
For that, we need to deepen our diaphragm and we need to not pull in our abdomen, we need to relax our abdomen.
Okay.
So that way we can expand the lower lobes of the lungs. But people often expand thinking lungs are only in the front and they expand their chest all the time and forget to not use their lower lungs. So often it's important when we inhale both upper lobes and lower lobes.
Okay.
So
So the abdomen should come out like a balloon. It
so
should, like,
for people
open
who
up.
don't understand, then we ask them place their palm on the abdomen and see that when they inhale, the abdomen actually comes in the
out.
front and not retracts back.
Okay. Makes sense. Yeah. So when we're doing physiological sigh as well, when we are breathing, the abdomen should come out.
Yes.
Okay.
We'll take two deep breaths, concentrate on expanding our lungs, both towards diaphragm and abdomen, expanding the abdomen too.
Exhale through the mouth.
And exhale to the mouth.
Sure.
3, 2, 1. Often
I think I did it wrong.
No.
I like tugged my stomach.
I didn't do it. I did well. Okay. You redo it.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Yeah.
I often do this when I have to lift my weights. And I see you do that too. It helps us lift better.
Oh, okay.
I think we should all use stress like a barbell, like our weights. As you progressively load it and do it in the rightful position, it will allow your muscle and body to grow. But if you use a wrong weight, wrong position, or you use too much of it, you break yourself.
Right.
So similarly, you should manage your stress. It's how you perceive.
Right.
If you use it well, it can allow you to grow. It will allow you to become better. But too much, if you're not modulating it better, then it can break your systems. Here we mean biological systems.
Got it.
We are trying to simplify very complex longevity science into bite-sized information. If you think this information is useful for you and for your family members, and if you think this life-saving preventive hacks can help people out there, please share these videos. And we are trying to do this every week. So please do like, share, and subscribe. I think it will be useful for your everyday life. If you think your friends or family members would also benefit from this information, please do like, share, and subscribe.